Detective Jack Morris sat in his office, going through old case files. On the desk in front of him lay a folder with yellowed pages. The case was old. During a festival in a small town, 2 girls, Emily and Sarah, went missing. The entire town searched for them, but their trail disappeared. There were interrogations, suspects, but nothing led to a breakthrough. The case remained unsolved. Jack flipped through the pages, pausing on witness statements. His attention was drawn to the words of a young man, Michael Harper. He had claimed to have seen the girls leaving with a woman, but in another statement, the same Michael said that perhaps they had been burned in a large bonfire near the forest. In a third interrogation, he mentioned a basement where they might have been held. The description of the basement was so detailed that Jack hesitated. Why did his statements contradict each other? And why was the basement described with such accuracy? Jack decided to find Michael, but quickly discovered that he had died in a car accident 2 years ago. The detective reread all of Michael's statements, jotting down key points. He noticed that in each interrogation, the young man added new details, as if he was trying to hide something, or, on the contrary, hint at something. A polygraph test at the time showed that Michael had lied. But why? Jack went to the forest clearing, where, according to Michael, the bonfire had been. He searched the area and found some old bones, but forensic analysis showed that they belonged to animals. Nothing useful. Disappointed, he got back into his car and drove away. As he traveled, his eyes fell on a lone house, standing away from the road. Jack suddenly remembered. It was Michael Harper's house. He stopped and approached the house. Now, a young family lived there, having bought it a couple of years ago. Jack introduced himself and asked if the house had a basement. The owners, slightly surprised, allowed him to inspect it. Descending into the basement, Jack felt a chill run down his spine. Everything was exactly as Michael had described. A low ceiling, damp walls, stone shelves. The detective pulled out a device to detect traces of blood. He scanned the walls, and within seconds, the device emitted a soft beep. There were traces, long washed away, but still detectable by technology. Jack froze. The disturbing suspicion that had been forming in his mind now took shape. Michael knew too much. His contradictory statements, the detailed description of the basement, the lies on the polygraph, all pointed to one thing. He was not just a witness. He was involved. But then Jack noticed something else. In the far corner of the basement, there was a crack in the floor, and nearby lay an old crowbar. Acting on impulse, the detective grabbed the tool and began breaking the floor covering. Loud banging echoed through the basement, until finally a hollow sound emerged. Jack tossed aside the broken concrete and leaned in. From the darkness, 2 small skulls stared back at him. Jack felt ice creep into his chest. But the most terrifying realization came a moment later. On one of the skulls, a tiny number was etched, barely visible, but readable. A case number, the very case he had been holding in his hands. His hands trembled. He slowly stood up and looked around the walls, feeling the pieces of memory fall into a horrific puzzle. Michael hadn't just known. He had tried to leave clues. He wanted Jack to find the truth. But why had he lied? Why had he given contradictory statements? Why had he described the basement so vividly? And then Jack understood something that made his stomach turn. Because Michael wasn't the killer. Because the real killer was the one who had interrogated him. Because the case number on the skull had been written in Jack's own handwriting. many years ago. Jack took a step back, dropped the device, and clutched his head. Fragments of conversations resurfaced in his mind, his own voice, words he didn't remember saying, or didn't want to remember. A quiet creak sounded behind him. The detective turned and saw the current owner of the house standing on the stairs. In his hand was a hammer. "Now you know everything, detective," the man said, tilting his head. "Too bad you won't get to tell anyone about it